Well, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Patent Literacy Symposium and this session on ECRI, a school's journey in systematic, equitable reading outcomes for all students. My name is Karen Brady, and I'm joined by my colleague, Stacy Cherney. We are excited to facilitate this session for everyone. But before we start, we just have a few housekeeping items to review. You can access the presenter handouts for this session, the presenters' bios, and the conference schedule on the patent website, and the link is provided in the chat. Just as a reminder, the session will be recorded and is 75 minutes in length, which includes a 15-minute question and answer period. To access closed captioning, click on the icon CC Live Transcript on the Zoom control panels in your Zoom panel. If you would experience technological difficulties, please go to the technical support guides area above the schedule on the symposium page. Please keep your video feature off and stay muted to eliminate any potential distractions during the presentation portion of our session. We would love for you to tweet out or share out on social media all that you are learning today from the Literacy Symposium. The hashtag for the symposium is hashtag PatentLit2022, and that is in the chat as well. And now we would like to introduce you to our presenters. We have from State College School District, Jonathan Klingeman, Jamie Ramey, Lori Corman, and eventually Danielle Yoder. So without further ado, we'd like to turn it over to State College.
There was my unmute button. Hi, everyone. Just want to make sure, Jamie, Lori, can you hear me? And can you see my screen? Everything looks good. Awesome. Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for taking some time to chat with us today. Karen, thank you so much for the introduction. And Stacy, it's so nice to meet you. I'm the Director of Federal Programs and Gifted Services for the State College Area School District and have been working in several different capacity roles, including working with our school psychology department, our Title I reading specialist, recently our English language development program. And I also run our summer school program. So I'm bouncing back and forth today because we were just finishing up training next door, but I'm really excited to be here with two of, in my opinion, and I'll get emotional if I talk too much about them, two of the best teachers that I have had the chance to work with in my career. I work closely with Lori as one of my reading specialists in my department, and Jamie Ramey is a first grade teacher at Easterly Parkway, who have been along with this journey for several years now, even through COVID, and it's been a pretty awesome experience. We want to start today and just give you a little bit of background. Some of you may have heard us speak before. We do have a little bit of extra stuff to add in, given some of the, I hate to say this, the positives that did come out of COVID are the way that we've been able to utilize some additional federal dollars to help support the marginalized populations within our school district and have you understand a little bit more about Easterly Parkway and its uniqueness within the State College community. We do serve the Pennsylvania State University educational system. So we have a very diverse community full of about 46 different home languages on our home language surveys, 8 elementary schools, and a lot of other fun in between. So today we want to talk about kind of where we have been as not only a school team, but as a district level team and where we're headed. And what we're really trying to do in utilizing research and best practices and implementing in schools. And I can tell you, and Jamie and Lori, who've been in the district for longer than me, can tell you that turning a ship, especially the size of one like in State College, as much as we have in a short period of time, has not been an easy feat. But I'm very proud of the teams and where we have gone in such a short amount of time. And the extra part of our presentation today is going to be talking a little bit more about how we've been incorporating bilingual education into the system as a supplemental experience for some kids and even as a core for others, given our very rapidly changing EL population within the district itself. So 2019 to 2022, we made it, everyone. We've made it to 2022. And I can tell you that where we are in 2019 is certainly very different and unique. Our school district for many years has been a Lucy Calkins program. We use her for reading, writing, and in 2018-19, we had quickly adopted into the phonics program. But what we really started to see is that there were some gaps not only for students, but also for teachers in terms of preparing and everything. And that's when we tried to really start to say, how can we start to work not only for the 80, 70, 60% of the kids who are meeting our core one expectations, but also really trying to expand into utilizing all of our systems a little bit more. And what does that mean? That means to stop working in silos. I need to stop working in silos, and we are trying our best to stop working in silos. So we were very blessed in 2019 to get accepted into Patton's EELO literacy program, where we were very pleasantly surprised with what we were able to do in a team-like approach and our district's transition and shift towards MTSS processes and systems. Though we are still a growing system within the district as a whole, there are several of our elementary schools that have really done a beautiful modification and change to really be serving all students based on the unique needs of the children and not necessarily relying on silos and systems. So after we were accepted into that grant program, we took an entire team down to Harrisburg for in-person training, learning more about enhancing core reading instruction with Carol Disson from the University of Oregon. Jamie was one of the attendees along with Lori. We also brought down our school psychologists, special education, our English language development teachers. We brought down instructional coaches, curriculum directors, building principals. We brought down a whole mess of people, and that whole mess started to sort itself out into a pretty cool growth. And even though we have had our ups and downs, what we've been able to learn at Easterly Parkway, what we have been able to learn at one of our other schools who's moving into using ECRI and an MTSS process is that it does support and help grow all students, which has really been what our journey has all been about. So where are we today? Since our adjustments and what we have really been taking a look at and trying to close gaps and focus on equity in all students and equitable curricular resources as well, is moving our district to a K-12 MTSS system. We are a RTI for SLD approved school district, and we recently just updated our programming for that to continue building and developing support for special education services as well, and making sure that everyone's on the same page and everyone's communicating and not everyone feels so disconnected in terms of that piece. This whole piece, though, I will say, wasn't just a kickstart and being like, oh, hey, let's call Patton and let's get some help. It actually all started from a MTSS conference that Lori Corman attended back in probably 2018, where she had the opportunity to hear Dr. Kilpatrick speak and started to bring back this idea of explicit and systematic instruction and phonemic awareness, which is where in a short amount of time, our district really wasn't using anything explicit in that regard. There was very few resources available to teachers, and we just saw what can happen with a grassroots movement when teachers start to stand up for what they believe is right, and when they have research back there to support them and a team that's back there to help them move mountains. I will say in a short amount of time, we've really been able to move mountains. And knowing that some of those mountains have been trickier to get around than others, and certainly COVID was one of them, but I'm really proud of what this team has been able to do along with our district-wide team. So that's a little bit about where we are today. We continue to have a lot of challenges, just like many other school districts, with turnover of teachers, with turnover of administration, with trying to sort out, dealing with federal funds and getting the resources to the groups that need them appropriately through COVID, and really trying to meet individual student needs. But that's one thing that I'm really, really proud of, that Easterly Parkway is extremely proud of what they have been able to do in such a short amount of time in the idea of a school system, because we know that education is one of the slowest moving industries out there. And what we've been able to do in just a short amount of time is pretty remarkable. And I'm pretty proud of the team that we get to work with here. So a little bit about what this team looks like. You're going to see that it is pretty large, and some people have different roles within that, and some people are a little bit more active than others. In fact, when we started this whole process, our now Assistant Superintendent for Elementary Education, who may be popping in today if she gets the chance, was the building principal at Easterly, and her background as a reading specialist and as an MTSS knowledgeable educator and administrator has really been helping to guide this piece as well. We have a new principal at Easterly Parkway who has a strong understanding of MTSS systems and has been working to not only learn the systems of Easterly, but also the different challenges that come with a school-based system, and certainly becoming a principal during a time of transition. And you can see the many other people that are working within our school team, including myself, our first grade team, all of the different intervention and support teachers, including, and I have to also give a huge shout out to Heather Spots, who is our IU consultant up here in IU 10. I know that we would not be anywhere we are today without her love, compassion, and consistent support, and my constant text messages at all hours of the night and her responses to them, regardless of whether she wants to answer them or not. So again, it's really the teamwork, and it's everyone being on the same page and moving forward. And I know that there are even some still to this day at Easterly Parkway, some slightly different values and opinions of the way some things need to look, given our educational experiences. But I will say in the meetings that I've been a part of is that people care about kids, and that's the most important part of this, which is why I think some people get super passionate about what they do, and they want to make sure that they're doing things correctly and supportive. A little bit about our school district. We serve about 7,000 students, and some additional information is there. We have 8 elementary schools, 2 middle schools, a high school. Class sizes there are averaging between 20 to 23, depending on our grade levels, and certainly COVID has affected that a little bit in the future. We only have 4 of our schools are actually target assistance schools. For those of you that receive Title I funds, none of our schools are school-wide. We do look for the targeted approach, which seems to work better for us, at least right now. We do not have a very high SES percentage, only about 16% district-wide, and that dynamic is continuing to change as the university changes and adapts. We're starting to see that. However, what this data doesn't represent right now is a large influx of migrant students that have been moving into the district at a pretty fast pace. And with my new role taking over the ELD department, as well as in the role that I work with literacy, it's been pretty exciting to be a part of that. But we have a lot of systems in place that are not meeting student need right now. And as many of you, if you're working in any sort of school, know that graduation requirements are changing with Act 158 next year. Your ELs are under no different expectation for the most part. And that's why I've been really focused on making sure that literacy is a part of all of our conversations for our EL learners. A little bit about Easterly Parkway. And again, this data is about an average. Obviously, with COVID, we don't have the best averages right now with what our actual SES percentages are, since the free lunch program did what it was allowed to do for a while. But it is our highest poverty school within the community. Around 30% of our families there are registered with free and reduced lunch. How I will say this in my role and my district-wide lens, I do believe that that's actually probably a little bit higher. And I do believe that our language barriers that we're trying to break down, as well as just parent pride, which I know some schools deal with on a regular basis as well, makes that a little bit more difficult to get parents to sign up for it. About 20% of our students are receiving EL services, and you can see there that a great majority of them too within first grade are receiving supports as well. And again, 26 languages within a school system itself is a lot to be able to manage. So it's not like we can easily be able to go in and provide bilingual education to all of our students. However, the highest percentage of need that we find is that the Spanish-speaking population does have that need. And a lot of those families are moving into the areas around Easterly Parkway, which is why we've been trying to adjust services, and not only adjusting our ELD services, looking at how bilingual education fits into this system, but certainly making sure that we're taking a strong approach at putting together a research-based, evidence-based core instructional program that is meeting the needs of all students, not just the 85% of the ones that are always going to be able to come in as proficient readers as well. So now we're going to take a little bit of step back, and I'm going to ask Lori and Jamie to talk a little bit more about the data, but we want to kind of put you into the little bit of a flashback to say, hey, here's where we were, and this is what we did about it. This is our response to that, and then we can talk a little bit more, and we will save time for questions at the end as well. So just a little bit about mobility there, given it does serve the majority of the actual campus community. A lot of graduate student housing, a lot of transitional housing does fall within that demographic area of our school. So there's a lot of mobility. And it does make it really difficult to meet students' needs where they are when they're always coming in at different points. But like I said, when you have a well-established MTSS system in place and kids are actually being discussed on a regular basis using data and other forms of anecdotal data as well, you really can try to be able to meet those unique needs. So I'm going to allow Jamie, Lori, I don't know who wants to kind of like teeter off each other here, but I think just starting with a little bit about where we are with our transitional data and kind of go from there, if you're okay with that. Make sure you guys.
Do you want me to start, Laurie? Or do you want to start with the data?
Lori, you're going to want to unmute yourself.
Oh, she can't.
It won't let you unmute. Okay, well, we'll try and do that too here. Hold on a second.
Then I'm going to go ahead and get started just looking at some of this data.
Yep, and then maybe,
okay.
Oh, there we go. I see you're unmuted now.
Perfect. Go ahead, Laurie.
Go ahead.
I was the reading teacher across town for many, many, many years. And so this is probably my 7th year in the building. And when I first came, our data pretty much, we never got probably more than 60% of the kids at grade level. So there was definitely, we felt an issue because we weren't able to move those kids to proficient from the red and the yellow. And so the first year we tried this, by winter, we already saw a huge amount of success with moving kids through the tiers. And that was just pretty much with the implementation of the program and the Haggerty program along with that. And so we were really happy to see that it made such an effect pretty quickly on in the process.
Jamie, anything else that you'd like to add to this one?
So I'm going to go back to the year before this as well, because our first grade team was brand new this year with the data that you're seeing. But the year previous to this, we were having a lot of conversations and frustration surrounding why can't we move? And I think teaching is such a personal job that we as teachers started to feel like we're taking this on as our personal mission and we must be doing something wrong, but it didn't feel like we weren't doing what was right for kids. So we were looking for the answer or the solution to help us move these kids forward. And at the beginning of the school year, before we went to the ECRI training, we had started doing flexible grouping based on needs. We'd been implementing Haggerty. And then during that reading time, we were really trying to be flexible and meet student need based off of our data. And while I feel like what we were doing was better than what we had done in previous years, it was an incredible amount of work and it still was not enough. When we went down to the training for ECRI, it was October, I believe. And then we came back, hit the ground running. So the data that you're seeing is also not implementing ECRI fully until late in the fall. And this was the impact that we saw almost immediately. And what we saw as teachers was the power that our students were gaining as readers, which as a teacher, this program is amazing, but I think the more I reflect and the more I hear people talk about some of their reservations about a highly explicit program is that it takes away from being a teacher. And the more I reflect, I think it enhances. You have to have a relationship with these children. And you have to have good data to talk about where we're going with them as learners. But being able to very clearly state to my students what we're working on and to give them power as both readers and writers has been huge for their confidence. It's been huge for us as teachers to feel confident in what we're sharing. And I don't think it's taken anything away from us as teachers. It's only enhanced with our collaboration, the way that we trust each other and talk about these students. And we are all really focused on what's best for these kids.
That's a really good point. Real quick, Laura, I just wanted to throw in there some of the struggles that we still have across our district is those not really feeling connected to an explicit and systematic program like that. We have some teachers who have been very clearly begging for something like this, and we have others that have been very comfortable being able to approach literacy in a much more open way. And ultimately, we are going to have kids in our school district come in as readers. We see that all the time. I mean, it's not uncommon, but that doesn't mean that what we're doing is good for all kids. And that's the biggest shift, I think, emotionally, where it really puts me up there to continue to advocate for more, is that we can't just do for the majority in this point. We really need to keep thinking of that visual of the fence. We're not talking about putting boxes under kids so they can see over now. We're talking about pulling the fence down completely. Lori?
And I was just going to say, and it really, because we use such a structured program, it is so beneficial for us moving them through the tiers. So when they get to tier 2, we're literally, I wish for this all my life as a Title I teacher, we are literally supporting what they're doing in the classroom 100%. The language is the same, the structure is the same, the routines are the same. And then when they get to the tier 3, we're just taking what they're really struggling with in the ECRI program and drilling down. So it really has helped us manage those tiers and know exactly what to do in those tiers to help kids be successful. And it is pretty succinct because we are so collaborative that it does help.
And that's a change. Our tier 2 for several years was doing very different stuff. When we were using programs that were approaching all the different components of reading, but not explicitly. We've talked with so many teachers who have really struggled with not understanding the amount of work that goes into a more whole language approach type system. And still not feeling really committed to it, even though we have some that are really committed to it and are still seeing success. I think it really comes down to, again, it's your clientele and who you're serving. And are you really trying to serve all students, or are you trying to maybe do what feels right? And at that point, data is data. Data is data, and you have to continue to move forward with that piece. So just a little bit more here from fall 2019 to winter 2020. This is the tier movement by skill. Word reading fluency. Pretty remarkable and incredible stuff. And I will say this, we were in the process of switching over to Acadience during some of this. So some of our data is still, in terms of historical data, not easy for us necessarily to be able to talk about, but we're starting year 3 with that. Nonsense word fluency.
It really also changed the way we looked at nonsense word fluency, I have to be honest.
Yeah, can you talk about that for a minute? Because we still have people that don't know. I'll be honest, I have teachers that don't know why we teach nonsense words and the importance of it. So do you want to mention that, Lori?
And every once in a while, I have somebody say to me, they're able to say all the sounds and blend, but they can't do it automatically. And I'm like, that's what we're talking about. And it was so interesting to watch kids get that unitization and just be able, after practicing and using ECRI, they truly are able to read those words. And I was this year's first grade group, and we tested them at the end of the year. I was like, so many of them, the better readers got all the way through the nonsense word fluency. And I'm like, let's say at the beginning of the year. And I was like, oh my gosh, even the better kids are much, in my opinion, much better readers. Like, we don't get a whole lot of extraneous word errors like we used to. Like, kids really are they're just better readers. They don't miss the A's and the thes, and they don't skip over words. They are really reading every single word. And so, but this nonsense word fluency, we, even in the reading department, went back and forth about how goofy it was, and it didn't really tell us anything. And we wanted to be able to give points for this, that, and the other thing. And just going through the training helped us and some extra reading, helped us understand how important that is in the bigger picture, and that kids really do need to have those skills, that skill to be a fluent reader and efficient reader. So it was an interesting journey.
I wanted to add in there too, as I continue to move through the data, because I do want to try to get to the content so that there are questions, time for questions and answers too. But I have seen, at least in my journey, during COVID, I also stepped in as a building principal for a year. I started to see classroom teachers utilize independent reading time much more efficiently. When we would take a look at teachers putting books in front of kids, and even if we say just write books or your dessert books and et cetera, I still had all of my kiddos in the reading specialists, or with my reading specialist in our select group. And I said but they're really our, really be questioning what they're actually doing in front of them for this 20 minutes to 30 minutes of time, and saying, I want them to really like the pictures, sure, but my goal here is to make sure that they're reading. And that's what ECRI has really brought to us. And it's pretty magical, especially for our students who are learning English for the first time. Pretty cool when they are starting to see themselves as readers and not just immersed in literacy. So it's a little bit of both.
Jonathan, can I interrupt and tell
Yeah,
one
please.
tiny story real quick? I'm sorry. This is actually a
go.
story from this year, and I have a student who missed out on school from the end of December until April, and then joined our first grade class in April, and knew his letter names and letter sounds. And I sat down with him with the Unit 1 decodable, and I said, so you know your sounds, let me teach you how to blend these sounds together, which is something that I have learned in all of my training with ECRI. And I think the other piece is that I have gotten such a deep understanding that it helps me to teach kids and explain things well. But I sat down with this student, and he reads the story as we go through and practice. This is how you blend these sounds together to make words. And he goes, I didn't know I was going to learn how to read today. And the power in that child walking out of the room that day feeling like a reader and saying, can you send a video of me reading to my mom? I don't think she knew I was going to read today either. So that is I think the bigger piece is that our students do feel like readers. They don't feel like they are guessing. They don't feel like they have to rely on vocabulary or experiences. They have foundational skills that they can rely on, that they know what to do, where Laurie and I have talked about, like, our kids just aren't guessing. Like our students in the past get to a word and just find the first sound and guess. Our students rely on the skills that they are taught and have a concrete strategy to move through the words. So it's been really powerful, I think, for both teachers and students.
That's great, Jamie. Thanks for sharing that, because that is a powerful piece that I have heard as well. And we've moved our summer program to be using enhanced core reading instruction. And even though it's not able to be done to the exact way that we want to do it, because it's a shorter program and we have a lot of new teachers that are really working with us, we truly believe that it's listening to the same things over and over again and hearing it. And even where some people might find that to be boring, I have seen some teachers do some really cool stuff to make this fun, to make it exciting. So this next data on the chart is just to kind of show you that where our beginning of the year reading composite scores have come in as we have followed cohorts through. So you'll get to see where this cohort came in almost at, less than 50% at benchmark at the beginning of their first year. And again, this is also, please note too, when we started this program, it was right before COVID shut down, and Jamie and Lori, and amongst many others, continued to teach ECRI remotely in the most incredible way. And some of you may have stumbled upon some of the videos that we shared during ECRI, because that has been a whole journey in itself into shifting, into communicating with parents and understanding that whole piece and the success that we were able to do. And I have to mention this, Mrs. Ramey, because it makes me feel really proud of you too. But during COVID last year, Mrs. Ramey had, how many did you have in your classroom last year?
26.
26 fully remote students. And how many of your 26 fully remote students ended the year at benchmark?
I think all but one.
All done remotely. It can be done. It can be done. And you don't have any better people if they're right here. They're right here on my screen that are able to advocate if that you do it the right way and you put the time into it and you make the relationships with the family and kids. It works. It really works and it makes sense, which is why our district has really been trying to shift towards understanding the science of reading a little bit more. Lori and I went through Letters 3 facilitation training. We have our instructional coaches going through Letters training. All of our reading specialists and some special ed teachers are going through it. We're really trying to embed what we know is what's best and what evidence we have to show that it's best in everyone else as we continue to move forward with things. And this chart also kind of shows you how students were coming in at the beginning of the next year when we started to implement ECRI at other grade levels. So you can start to see a little bit of the difference when we started adding in kindergarten and when we added in second grade. And I can tell you that there were a lot of tears with teachers when they were told that they were going to have to change the way that they completely thought about literacy instruction. And it wasn't without a lot of pain too. I know it was a lot of pain, but I will say this, once they started to see it in action is really what changed their opinions and what changed their minds. And when they started to understand the why, it's not like we ever just go in and hand someone ECRI and say, go ahead and start. No, we absolutely start with an overview of the science of reading and talk about orthographic mapping and make sure that people understand why we're doing what we're doing. And this is not just another thing. This is science. This is science. And for me, not being a science guy, if it makes sense to me, it can make sense to everyone, especially for someone who wasn't trained in primary literacy as I wasn't formally. Anything else to add on to that one, that last chart? I know that's a pretty powerful one too. Okay. And just to kind of show a little bit of where our class by class data, I don't want to spend too much time with this, but when we start to see how students were moving through the tiers, I think was pretty powerful. Jamie, did you want to mention anything about this, or Lori?
I just want to point out that we had students that were growing in every percentile. So one of the other arguments is that students that already know how to read are going to be bored with this program, and they will be if you let them be. You do, just like every other part of teaching, you have to bring your personality and your joy and the fun to it. But the other piece, for the students that came in that were really excellent readers, we saw the biggest transfer piece into their writing. And how many times do you have those kids that come in reading every word and their writing is horrendous? And we saw the shift in those students in their writing, but also in their comprehension, because they, again, had a strategy that they were able to use on those more complex words.
That's a really good point. I'm glad that you brought that up.
I was gonna say, if I can add one more thing.
Please.
Our third grade teachers at the beginning of this year, because this is the group that started off, and they came to me and they said, not only is their spelling, I can read it, it's great, but because their spelling was so good and they didn't have to worry about that, they were writing much more. And they're like, we usually get like a quarter of a page. And they said, look at this, it's front and back. And so it was interesting. They wish it was in third grade because they've starting to see the results of what's happening.
Through all that piece, we're still in the process of aligning our tiered processes. Right now, we're really working to better help special ed become part of our processes across the district and making sure that the systems that are in place are working for all kids. This is just something, some of the stuff on your screen about what the programming looks a little bit alike and what it could look like depending. But again, we're in a very different place within our school district, and everyone's a little bit different, but we're using the work of our two Title I buildings, Easterly Parkway and Mount Nittany Elementary, to be the leaders in our MTSS systems, because they really are working through things. So again, we talked a little bit about what that looks like, more specifically classroom teachers at Tier 1. And when we mean Tier 1, we mean also with fidelity. That's something that we had our team and the first grade teachers were completely committed to fidelity. We were offered coaching. They encouraged the coaching. They wanted to continue to do better. And we continued to learn as a team. It wasn't this whole big hammer down approach that everyone felt a main stress on. Again, depending on where you are and the unique needs of the kids, there may be some light and abbreviated preview for students in the classroom. We're very blessed in our district to have paraprofessionals in our K-2 classrooms. So starting to take a look at how those instructional paras need to be more used for instruction and how they could be helping to support, whether it's directly with phonics, phonemic awareness, or any other unique student needs. But I guess what I would try to say is that we're drilling down. We're drilling down and starting to meet students where their needs are once they're moving up into the tiered systems. COVID happened. We talked briefly about that and where we did and how we were managing moving forward. We talked about the videos that we've mentioned, and our communication stuff is there. So please feel free to reach out with us when you have questions about any of that, and we'll give you access to be able to see the videos that have been prepared as well. I'll put it into the chat at some point here when we're moving forward. But small groups were done in tier 2 and tier 3, and really it was dividing and conquering. Everyone was on board during COVID. And then once everyone came back, we started to see again the influx of our English language learners within the school system. And we just also happened to be blessed to have one of our second grade teachers who was bilingual in Spanish work with some of our COVID relief funding and Lori to stay after school for 30 minutes and provide a mixed approach of both bilingual and explicit systematic phonics and phonemic awareness instruction. So they would get 15 minutes with Lori in reading and full English, then they would also get 15 minutes with Alex in Spanish. And we've actually seen such a growth, an important part of Alex's positions, who is on your screen right now, that we have actually used our American Rescue Plan money to fund her as a bilingual family liaison for our community. So not only is she working with our families and bringing voice to those who are from marginalized populations within the community that speak Spanish and others, but she's also very rapidly bouncing from school to school using Spanish as a way of helping to teach some of this. And this year we had almost 15 students join our high school program who were very low proficiency in English. So we actually started to build, because we weren't ready for it, a program for our high school students where they were getting explicit and systematic instruction in phonics, being 16, 17 years old. And Alex and her team and what she's learned at Easterly Parkway has been able to do that. But it's just really showing that little supplemental piece that we're really trying to provide more to hit this very unique population of students. And again, we are advocating right now, starting to plan for, I know, crazy, for budgeting for not next school year, obviously, but the following school year, is to take Alex's bilingual position and to make it full-time, because what she's been able to provide for this unique population of kids is changing lives in a very, very quick way. And it's really exciting that this, in my opinion, all kind of started with ECRI. It kind of all started with ECRI and really trying to dig into filling and supporting that piece. And again, even though her position as a bilingual educator, family liaison, teaching ECRI, teaching some Spanish and going back and forth, these are just a few of the skills and a few of the things that she's been able to do in just a year. So we've just had the position for 1 year so far, and how we've been able to help enhance communication is amazing. And I will tell you this, because Jamie said this earlier, the communication part and the family investment into ECRI is also really, really important. And Jamie, maybe you can add in there, because I know we're going to be getting to time really soon, about how when COVID happened, that connection was really, really important.
So I think one of the pieces that we tried to do in our understanding of ECRI was to then pass on some of that understanding to the parents and why we were doing what we were doing, what it should look like at home for your child to be actively engaged and participating, the purpose behind it, how you can support. And we did that through videos. I actually had, because again, it's COVID, so I just drug my poor daughter in and had her do ECRI with me, and then said, this is what we're going to be doing. This is what it'll look like. Here's what you can do to support. But we also tried to make it understanding that kids are very different with their parents, and kids might not have a parent that's able to sit right next to them for the lessons, that we tried to make it so that all students were capable of doing the lessons independently. And the program is structured and explicit. So doing the video lessons, the biggest piece was participate. And if they're not participating, at least they're exposed. They're seeing the text, they're hearing the reading, that if that's the very least, because it was a year of giving grace, but it was also bringing those parents in and what questions do you have and being available for that support. And parents have shared how it's changed their kids as readers as well. So I think that's a really, again, when we come down to education, like relationships are the key part. If your kids don't trust you, if the families don't trust you, if you don't trust them, you're not getting very far. And the same comes with this collaboration as a team. There's so much trust in collaboration. And I think that's one of those key pieces for all of us.
And I will say this too, we've utilized a lot of our parent and family engagement money from the Title I grant to be able to help support that. And we continue to do that, trying to find ways that we can share with families this information, because we know how critical it is. Lori, you looked like you were going to say something. I wanted to give you a chance.
I was just going to add on to what Jamie said. And with Alex's position at the beginning of the year, we had parent conferences, and Alex came to all our Spanish speaking conferences. And the one little boy in 4th grade, Dad just got really emotional. And he said, I want my kids to be readers, and I don't understand. They tell me they don't know how to read, they don't know how to write. And it was just this whole shift that we could start talking about how they should be writing, they should be able to read. They're not as proficient then as they are now. But just being able to open those communication lines between the parents and us was so powerful, and really, I think, changed the kids' lives this year, because they knew we were holding them as accountable as their parents. And often I would say to them, does Mrs. Croswell need to text your dad about something? And they'd be like, no, I can tell him. But it just really opened those lines of communication where I just thought it was really powerful. Her position has really changed the lives of those kids in the better.
Thanks for sharing that, Lori. So this is just real brief.
Learning. Learning. L-E-A-R-N-I-N-G. Palabra. Learning. Significa aprendiendo. Mi turno, young. Tu turno, young. Deletrea. Y-O-U-N-G. Palabra. Young. Significa joven. Mi turno, 8. Tu turno, 8. Deletrea. E-I-G-H-T. Palabra.
So just a little snapshot about some of the work that Alex has been able to do. She's done the same thing with the decodable texts, all related to the lessons that are coming in through what the kids are getting, obviously, in their tiered support. Then I can tell you that some of these kids are, 3rd grade or whatnot, that are also at a kindergarten reading level. And we're trying to meet their unique needs, specifically with the programming.
¿Qué es el título que está acá? A or I? Una. Este es un nombre extraño. Merch. Nunca he conocido a una persona que se llama Merch. Pero ¿qué es un bath? Un baño. Baño, right. So un baño para Merch. ¿Quién será Bert? Merch.
So again, we're continuing to build on the position and trying to advocate for additional supports for all of those families, and making sure that literacy is a part of that. So this is just kind of like an offset program and a goal that we've set. But again, I really do feel that it all comes down to ECRI, and it's what we've been able to learn and what we've really been able to see. Okay. So I don't, Jamie, Lori, anything else that you would like to add? I know I want Karen to maybe come back if we want to take some time for questions. I forget where we are on that piece.
I was just going to say, there is power in having kids do it at least twice. So Alex and I had a calendar that we kept track of what lessons we were on. And if for some reason she couldn't do the lesson that day, or I couldn't do the lesson that day, we would go in and change the calendar. So we were always working on the exact same story for the day. We also started that group out at kindergarten because we didn't want them to miss any skills. So we fast tracked them all the way through the kindergarten book. And we were able to actually move them fast enough that they were at the end of the first grade book by the end of the year. And they were so excited to be readers. It was just crazy that we had done some back work last year at the end of the year, but to get them ready, but it was just so fascinating to watch them walk in. They talked a lot more in group. Their confidence level was through the roof. But we did have to finagle and kept track of like making sure that they were getting when we were fast tracking, make sure that they were really getting those skills and assessing them and progress monitoring them weekly to make sure that they were continuing to grow as readers. So I just wanted to say there was a lot of collaboration in that. And for those kind of readers, I do think they need a double dose of preview. And it just seems to be pretty powerful and successful.
My contact information is up on the screen. Feel free to reach out with questions. I could certainly forward them off to Jamie and Lori, depending on if they're too specific for me to be able to answer. But I know we want to make sure that we have time for some questions, because typically when we do this presentation, we usually do get some. And I will put into the chat, Karen, just so you know, the link for the ECRI videos. Some people may already have them, but that link has pretty much blown up in 2 years. The people that request that link are from all over, not only the state, but the country. And I've even had different people in different countries reach out for that link. So it's pretty cool.
Thank you so much for sharing this version of your ECRI implementation. We're so excited about your outcomes and would like to say that we as Patton are very thankful to be able to walk beside you on this journey over the last few years.